Hi everyone, welcome back to Nasedyanka, the channel where I talk about Bulgarian history, tradition, and faith and culture. So here I am beginning episode 16, and this will be part 1. Feel free to refer to the introduction of my episodes 15 and 16, where I introduced what I was going to talk about, and that was during Great Lent before our Pascha for us Orthodox Christians. It can give you a little more information, but in a nutshell, this will be the place, all of the parts I will put under episode 16 that will contain information about the Orthodox Christian marriage and more specifically morality within the Orthodox Christian marriage. I decided to offer you guys this information based on some people's request that I would talk about this. So, as I've mentioned before, because I do have a different job, if you recognize me in these videos, please know that this has nothing to do, it's unrelated to my job. And if you are triggered by any of that content, then don't watch it, please. But if you are interested genuinely in this case, in the Orthodox Christian tradition, in marriage in the church, in the Orthodox Church, as well as Bulgarian history, then feel free to subscribe to my channel and follow along. So with this in mind, I will share with you one specific article this time for this part 1 in episode 16, which I translated, and so it comes from the let's see, and I'm reading and I'm sharing with you guys. It was published on the website of the Holy Synod of the Bulgarian Orthodox Church by the Bulgarian Patriarchy. The website I am including in the comments section as usual. The title is The Sanctity and Importance of the Marriage Union. It was published by the Holy Metropolia of the city of Lovech in Bulgaria, January 2013, and that's about that. I should say, as a side note, that in order to understand and talk about the Orthodox Christian marriage, we must have a thorough and in-depth understanding of the Orthodox Christian Church, and not just blindly attend services, but fully participate if we are to call ourselves Orthodox Christian. Nowadays, many people theorize about what marriage is, what it isn't. So this video focuses on the Orthodox Christian authentic marriage, and it's not the only video I'm gonna make. I'll make many more again on this theme. So the article informs us that in our country, Bulgaria, there are such unions which have been strengthened and sanctified by God Himself, and which therefore no human authority has the right to destroy. And so what are these unions? They are those that constitute and make up our whole social life, and through which it is actually sustained. Such unions of extreme importance are family, marriage unions, civil, as well as ecclesiastical. It can be said of them, what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. So, what is the first union an Orthodox Christian knows about? Without a doubt, it is the marriage union. How important the marriage union is evident from the fact that it was established by God Himself even in paradise. And the main purpose of the union was indicated by God in Genesis chapter 1, verses 27 through 28, where it said that, and God created man, in the image of God created He him, male and female created He them, and God blessed them, saying to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Therefore, in marriage is the root of all human society, and God's blessing given to marriage extends over the entire human race. Because of this, great good comes from those marriages that keep God's blessing upon themselves. Likewise, great is the evil, in other words, the crookedness, the deception that stems from those spouses who, through their own fault, in other words, their own faulty thinking and erroneous choices and beliefs, core beliefs, lose this blessing or enter into their unions completely without a blessing, in other words, arbitrarily or impulsively. Similarly, bad marriages that exist, they are marriages that are dysfunctional in modern terminology, that have been entered into contrary to God's will, multiplied depravity in the antediluvian world and brought the terrible wrath of God upon the whole human race. Stay tuned, because one thing I want to advise everybody as a side note is, if you guys are coming from a Western, Protestant, even Roman Catholic background, please try to proceed as a blank slate, because I'm using words, Christian words clearly, that are common, but the Orthodox Christian Church is completely different from all of the subsequent sects and denominations that stemmed in later years. The Orthodox Christian Church has preserved the original knowledge and teaching as Jesus Christ has brought it here, and I'm noticing above and beyond, it's so sad and so heart-wrenching how much the Western world has twisted the Orthodox Christian meanings of the words. So I just wanted to add this to the side and keep you updated. Just keep a mind, an open mind. So coming back to the article, it informs us further that the Lord Jesus Christ showed the importance of the marriage union not only by the fact that he favored the marriage in Cana of Galilee for the first time, where he revealed his miraculous power, but also by the fact that in his church he originated a special source of grace for Christian spouses by accepting their union in the number of his holy sacraments. And the Orthodox Christian Church has so-called 7 mysteries. Marriage is one of those mysteries. A mystery in Bulgarian language, tainstvo, comes from the word taina, which literally means secret. So a mystery is a secret. It is a spiritual mystery. It's a secret that is possibly incomprehensible to the human conscious mind. In Ephesians chapter 5, verse 32, it is said, "But I speak of Christ and of the church." With these words, the apostle portrays the high importance of Christian marriage. The mystery of marriage is great, he says, because it is an image of the most holy union of Christ with the church. And here we're not talking about some kind of a brick building church. We're not talking about a denomination. We're talking about a spiritual body. We're talking about specific, enlightened knowledge, factual reality, information that involves not only the physical body, but the ways our psyche and spirit function. So the mystery of marriage is great. From this high concept of Christian marriage are derived all the so-called duties. Again, be careful how you translate that. They are to say our roles and responsibilities of the Christian spouses. First and foremost, are Christians entering into marriage not responsible for preparing in a proper way for this so very important and sacred union which is formed for life? And side note, whenever people unite with another, it's not just flesh uniting, it's spirit uniting. There are spiritual bonds and ties that many pagans are familiar with. But we're not pagan, we're Orthodox Christians. We're very familiar with that as well. Coming back to the article. The Orthodox Church requires a certain age from those who marry, above all, so that they be able to understand the meaning of marriage and the importance of the responsibilities that they take upon themselves through marriage. It's important that one has developed their prefrontal cortex, that one can think maturely and not in an infantile, impulsive manner. This is my side note here, coming back to the article. Also, The church requires future spouses to know the law of God well, so that over time they can teach proper faith and piety in a proper manner to the children that God will give them. Here I'm gonna make a side note again. The language used here only and only and only belongs to the Orthodox Christian Church. I want to emphasize this, that no other so-called Christian church is a part of the Holy Orthodox Church, and as such, the Orthodox teachings are completely different from any subsequent quote-unquote churches that were invented in the later years past the year of 1054 AD, which is when the Great Schism occurred. You guys can inform yourselves, research this. Maybe someday in the future I can create a video. I'll be happy to. As such, please do not assume that the Christian terminology that you may be acquainted with from a Protestant or a Roman Catholic background, even atheist background, whatever the modern background is, it basically doesn't translate as the same as the Orthodox original meaning. I can tell you straightforward, it does not. Thank you so much for hearing this out. So coming back to the article, any coercion into marriage is prohibited, so that marriage is a union of love and not a forced commitment. And again, I'll make a side note here. The Orthodox Church has always encouraged its members to respect personal consent, personal choice, and boundaries. And I emphasize this because I work in a Western atmosphere. I work with many people who unfortunately have been hurt deeply by Protestant beliefs and other made-up beliefs, and as such they have become victims of coercion where their consent was unheard and their boundaries were broken. This is not what the Holy Orthodox Church ever taught. Coming back to the article, after all, what should the love of a couple look like? It's not a type that's the impulsive type. So the love of the married couple, of a couple, is not the fake love that's based on impulsivity, on passion, that's blind, that doesn't reason and does not know the importance of the marriage union, but on the contrary, the pure Orthodox Christian marriage is based on love that is prudent, judicious, obedient to the will of God, and it is surrounded by the fear of God. In modern terminology, that translates as respectful, humble, gentle, vulnerable. Healthy vulnerability is power. Compassionate, caring, accountable. The main and common duty of Christian spouses is love and faithfulness. I mean, if you guys think about this, what's love? That's compassion. That's when you can pour your heart. I can pour my heart to my beloved. And faithfulness, yeah, of course, we want to be honest and faithful. We don't want to go and deceive people by stabbing them in the back. So these are virtues that, more than anything else, make their union similar to the union of Christ with the church. This is a spiritual example there. So let their love be pure and not selfish for any worldly gain, a love ready in any case to lay down its soul for its friend, beloved. This, again, is derived from scripture. So marital or conjugal fidelity must be steadfast, unchanging unto death, a fidelity alien to not only to adulterous deeds, but also to adulterous thoughts and feelings. It's not just that in act we should not lie and deceive our beloved, but also in the thought we should not cheat, lie, deceive, manipulate, gaslight, and so forth. Let husbands and wives, the article continues, be honored as belonging to one another and constituting one flesh, as the scripture says, they shall both be one flesh. Thus the Holy Apostle also teaches, the woman is not the master of her body, but the man. Likewise, the man is not the master of his body, but the woman. So this comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 4. Let's make a side note here. I have heard of Protestant Western perversions where a crooked liar bribes a victim by instilling into their mind that the woman should submit in spite of his evil actions. But I have also heard the exact same foolish, manipulative tactic by atheists. As a matter of fact, I was once invited to dinner with atheists who tried to attack me on the basis of their misunderstood poor knowledge of Christianity. But unfortunately, they were using very lame and pop culture misunderstood ideas. So let's carefully notice here that the true Orthodox Church teaches equality. Such vulnerability that empowers each party or each partner to be authentic and tuned into the other. If they are not, no matter how much they mask themselves under the terminology of Christians, no matter how much they mask themselves under the terminology of righteous, no matter how many vows they make, prayers they make, no matter how they talk and they cover their heads or bodies, it does not matter. It does not make them any Christian at all if they're not practicing the Christian virtues of what we just spoke about. So let's just note this very well. I really wanted to make those side notes because again and again, I can very easily see how people who have been wounded spiritually by liars in the spiritual realm can also naturally misunderstand the healing and authentic sources of the Orthodox Christian Church. Coming back to the article, it continues to inform us that mutual assistance to each other also applies to the common responsibilities of spouses, which Christians should not reduce only to life's basic needs, but in fact they are responsible to extend to higher spiritual needs as well. In other words, they are responsible and accountable to help each other in the work of salvation, to strengthen each other in faith and in trust in God, not only to pray for each other, but also with each other, so as to assist each other, and thus to form in their home a little society, a little home churches like we call it in Bulgarian language. All this is especially necessary when God bestows upon them children. Now, children are not necessarily an expectation in the Orthodox Christian tradition. However, when there are children, it becomes necessary so that the children are enlightened spiritually, like in Bulgarian language that was translated as spiritualized. In other words, they are enlightened. They're filled with the spiritual virtues, the light of the truth, by the Christian virtues of their own parents. So you guys can see here, if the Christian parents are not practicing virtues, there's no way that they can fill the cup of their children with that light, enlightenment. If you don't have some kind of information, there's no way that you can deliver the knowledge to somebody else. So this is what this is talking about. Coming back to the article, it continues. So, what are the specific duties or responsibilities of the husband and wife, of the husband, and what are they for the wife? So they arise from the relationship in which God's word places man to woman and woman to man. The man is the head of the woman, says the apostle in Ephesians 5:23. And the woman is called the body of his head. Side note, unfortunately, this has been very deeply, terribly perverted in the West that I have noticed in other places as well around the world. By means of misinformation and mistranslation of in the Western Protestant realms more so. I observe this crookedness on a daily basis. I have had the chance to compare different Bibles with the original Orthodox Christian Bible, and I noticed that not only do they miss and lack a good chunk of the original text, but they also don't translate the exact same sentences. I have compared the exact same places and I see the Protestant Bible says one thing and the Orthodox Christian has completely different verbiage, different meaning, different sentences. So I want to alarm you guys to this. This is important. So again, so as to raise awareness and deliver this information to you for your own sake, so that you may research it wherever you are as well. So coming back to the article again, the reality that the Holy Orthodox Church has always taught is different, and it goes like that. As the head governs the body, it foresees its dangers. So with my head, I can see the dangers, right? It protects it. The head protects the body. So the man, symbolically, right, has the governing power in the home. His power is to protect. That's what it means to be the head. With your head, you can look outside for any vehicles, any bears or whatever comes your way, so as to protect your body. You can look for what the weather is out the window and dress appropriately. So is the man the protector of the body. This is symbolic, poetic language, if you want to put it that way. Above all, he is responsible to take care of his wife's maintenance, his body's maintenance, right? His wife, and the maintenance of the whole family. This is precisely what the apostle commands. He says, "So ought husbands to love their wives as they love their bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself, because no one has ever hated his flesh, but nourishes and warms it, as does the Lord, the church." As does the Lord, the church, right? This comes from Ephesians chapter 5, verses 28 through 29. Another side note I have for you guys is these parts of the Bible have been the most butchered, in my experience, in the West, and I stand strongly against corruption, lie, and perversion. The Christian love is not about physical sex and harm or manipulation. It is about higher enlightenment, spiritual growth. That involves spirit and morale. It involves finer matters. Okay, coming back to the article. So what is the woman called to do? It says, "You women submit to your husbands as the church submits to Christ. So should wives submit to their husbands in everything." It comes from Ephesians chapter 5, verses 22 and 24. It is also said, "A woman should fear her husband." You guys, I know I'm using magical words here, but this is it. Let's really interpret them correctly. Subjugation and fear of love. Because such is the submission and fear of the church in relation to Christ. With this attitude, the apostle compares the attitude of the woman to the man. So side note, you can see I needed to add many side notes here because again, oh man, I'm aware of the perversions in the Western so-called modern society where people talk about religion, and it just needs a lot of clarification there. Okay, side note. Unfortunately, many of our modern Western interpreters have fallen into infantile black and white translations that conclude that women are to be terrified and blindly follow their husbands. I am pained to see people, friends, and acquaintances that still ascribe to this belief. It's a wrong belief. Such is not the Orthodox Church's teaching. As a matter of fact, you can read about thousands, countless of Orthodox Christian women who not only did a man's job, but also renounce any conditioning from the pop culture, society. They had a voice in political matters. They had a voice, a personal voice, and a choice. Okay, so to understand these words, you too must first of all renounce any of your own personal conditioning that stems from Western, Protestant, other religious, crooked, misunderstandings, such kind of a background, and begin to explore as a blank slate, honest and open. So in Bulgarian language, the word fear, strach, also is related to strahopočitanie, and we do not compare that to ужас, which is horror, terror. In the English language, fear is fear, and unfortunately, a lot of our mental health fields talk about in terms of anxiety and disturbance. In the Bulgarian language, fear actually, especially again in the biblical context, strahopouchitanie, is one that's connoting the idea that I so respect and so revere this person sitting next to me that I fret lest I hurt them. I want to listen to them actively. I want to participate in their life actively. I want to be honest and as upfront and a healing presence for them as possible. This is the meaning of our fear. That's not what I've heard from Westerners about their English fear. So let's start bridging that here and begin to think and challenge our misconceptions. So a note I added in addition to all this is that in the exact same manner, a baby depends completely on his or her mom for nourishment. And if mom abandons the baby, she leaves a wound for life. There is a wound of rejection, wound of malnourishment, wound of neglect, wound of abandonment. Many self-help books and psychological books are writing nowadays about this because there's much research in the area. People are becoming more and more aware, right? But if you tell me that by stating this hierarchical fact, I am making mom as a violent figure and the baby as a victim figure, then that would be completely misunderstood and crooked. The hierarchy is there in order to clarify and clear and make sure that each party is respected and honored and nurtured. So we cannot practice humility and respect if we refuse to receive. We cannot practice vulnerability if we refuse to listen and be genuine. Hence, order. Okay, I realized that there was yet another little glitch with my camera, and again, I apologize for that, but I'm going to continue here. I wanted to say that hence, order is needed. This is what the Holy Orthodox Church has been teaching for the past 2,000 years of humanity. So back to the article. When is this subjugation and or what is the subjugation and fear of love? Obedience in all that is not contrary to law. In other words, facts, accepting of factual information objectively, willingly, freely, and sincerely. A fear not tormenting, it is not servile, but benevolent and friendly. In other words, it's apprehension and careful attention not to offend a beloved and respected friend. After all, isn't the man also obligated to respect his wife? The article says. And so the Apostle Paul instructs the man to give honor to the woman, or the husband to give honor to the wife, by saying in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7, you husbands speak, live wisely with your wives, and give honor to the female sex as a weaker vessel. So a reminder here, I will remind every one of you guys, first of all, that the word fear in Bulgarian language is completely different from the word fear in English. Fear in the Bulgarian, more so the Orthodox context, like strahopouchitanie, strach, it's different from ужас. In Bulgarian, in English, it's just fear. We just use the word fear, and it almost connotes anxiety and some kind of a terror. But such is not what, again and again, our word implies, what it means. In the context of strach и strahopouchitanie, it actually implies that I love you so much, I fret, I don't want to hurt you in any single way. I want to be honest, I want to be tender, I want to be gentle, I want to be compassionate. That's different from the terror that's been implied from the English word of fear. And so, what honor are we also talking about? Is the Bible talking about from an Orthodox Christian perspective? Well, honor in this context is meaning as a helper, as a housewife for the wife, as a mother of children if she has children, because again and again, the purpose of Christianity is not children. You guys, again, this is a huge dichotomy there, difference. The purpose is not bearing of children. Yes, children are a blessing. Yes, children are the angels of a home. Yes, it's wonderful for those who have them, but that's not the goal. What do you think the goal of Christianity is? The goal of Christianity is salvation. It is life upon eternity. That is why people who at some point conceived but they lost the child for one reason or another are still co-creators upon eternity. So when we talk about honor, this pertains to the spouse as a helper, to the wife as a housewife, as a mother of children, bearer of children, especially in the words of the same apostle who says that she's a co-heir of the blessed life. In other words, we say in Bulgaria, the spouses become co-creators of eternity. Every single conception, even if it's not carried out to full term, is a soul conceived upon eternity. So whether or not it manifests through physical existence, that soul exists already in eternity, and we Christians are striving for life upon this eternity. That's the whole point of a Christian, not children, contrary to common belief. So coming back to, again, the article says further, in this regard, that is in the work of salvation. The rights and advantages of men and women are perfectly equal. As the Apostle Paul testifies in Galatians chapter 3, verse 28, in Christ Jesus he says, there is neither male nor female, for you are all one. On her part, so does the woman not have the right to give useful advice to her man? In other words, does she really not have any rights to have an opinion, to bring him back to his senses? God himself once commanded Abraham to listen to Sarah's voice when she defended the honor of her son Isaac. That's in Genesis chapter 21, verse 12. So let the Christian wife also protect the honor of her family, and if she sees careless actions of her husband, she should meekly try to protect him from delusions, and she should rightly advise him. So by meekly, we're talking about respectfully. By the way, in dialectical behavior therapy, there is such a talk, a realm within the module of mindfulness that talks about wise mind. And it's based on Buddhism. Granted, we are not Buddhist, we are talking about Orthodox Christianity, but for those who are not Christian and come from the secular world, I can just I'm using this language so as to bring your attention to what meekness is about. It's about being able to put together two things that seem opposite. It's about being able to maintain self-composure, to come from a window of tolerance, using the language of nowadays research into trauma and the nervous system's response to trauma. In other words, on the one hand, we can react by fight, flight, freeze. On the other hand, we can respond meekly. Be completely cool, calm, collected, composed, meek. So here is another side note. We're talking about healthy confrontation. When we talk about the Christian wife protecting the honor of her family, we're talking about her healthily confronting her husband when necessary, her children, her family members. A truly vulnerable person knows how to healthily confront for the better of self and other. This means for salvation's sake. I spoke in an earlier episode, I believe it was episode 13. You guys can recognize it by the title. I called it Healthy versus Unhealthy Obedience. Feel free to see that because it talks a little further about this subject here. So in the Western culture, I have noticed that people tend to fret, and I'm mindful because I don't want to put everybody under the same denominator. Everybody does not pertain to that mindset. Of course, I'm speaking from personal experience about the things that have impressed me with much concern. So part of this is where I've heard that people fret to confront. I've also heard people ascribe to the myth that in order to confront, one must be ugly, aggressive, and angry. Well, that's not confrontation. It's not healthy confrontation. Healthy confrontation, on the other hand, is meek, respectful, calm, cool, collected, honest. Healthy vulnerability is not weakness, it's not impulsivity, it is calm, cool, collected. Healthy vulnerability is power to be authentic, to be true. Hence, we're talking about the truth which Christ has brought upon humanity. And the Orthodox Christian Church again and again preserves that. So coming back to our article here, it continues by saying that, by the way, a pious woman can and must influence her husband beneficially. So not much by words as by example. So if some, writes the Apostle Peter, if some men do not obey the word, by the behavior of their wives, they may be won. This is coming from the Bible, Peter 1, or 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 1. Side note here, this is a special moment which goes hand in hand with the modern understanding that experiential knowledge is better learned than lecturing somebody. Those of you guys who have probably attended conferences, some kind of a conference in your life, you probably know the difference between a lecturer who talks until you get bored, and you probably take notes to keep distracted, but then you barely probably read your notes. I know a good chunk of people who actually get really bored with that, versus a presenter who introduces activities, interactive activities. The reason why many nowadays do this more and more, experiential and interactive activity kind of approach, is because research is showing us that the human brain handles information in that manner. It retains information better when it is experiential, showing it by action, rather than talk. So some of you might say, well, Gloria, wouldn't you just please start showing us some pictures on your videos? And I want to validate that would be wonderful and perfect, because most of what I do is talk, but I'm sorry, I can't. I have a full-time job and I don't have the time to invest in making videos of that caliber. Would it be great? Yes, absolutely, that would be awesome. But for now, I do my best, and so that's what I can offer you guys. Thank you for understanding. So the article also tells us further that the same apostle commands Christian wives to endeavor to adorn themselves, not with beautiful clothes, but above all with meekness and with patience, which are virtues. Their adornment, he says, should not be external. In other words, by braiding their hair, adorning themselves with gold, or wearing luxury or specific clothes, but rather internally. This is where the hidden man of the heart resides. Of course, we're using poetic imagery here to describe something that's hard to grasp. It is in the imperishable beauty of the meek and the quiet spirit. So this derives from 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 3 to 4. Here's a side note. In other words, it does not matter what you mask yourself with. The essence of your spirit is what will endure upon eternity, right? This is going to rot. This is going to rot. My masks are going to rot. Clothes and jewelry are going to eventually rot, even if it takes thousands of years. But the spirit, the attitude, it lives on. Here is the true beauty that does not wither, even in old age. Here are ornaments worthy of all respect, which are not only not ruinous to the family, but constitute its best wealth. By the way, in family therapy, we are very well familiar of the so-called family legacy, as well as trauma that may be transmitted from generation to generation, but also gems and strengths are being transmitted from generation to generation. So if you think about the subtle energy, our spirit, how much more does it transmit from generation to generation? So this comes back to how important the crux, the root, the family is, because there is an attitude, an energy, a being about it that actually goes on generation after generation after generation and so forth. So it's important that we grasp, we took care in the here and now to make positive changes about these families, core families that we are in right now, or that we're choosing to enter in right now. The article continues by saying that for a virtuous woman, in the words of Solomon, is more precious than a pearl. Her husband's heart is confident in her, and he will not be without gain. This comes from Proverbs chapter 31, verbs 10 through 11. Side note, once again, if you guys are thinking sexual gain, you are misunderstanding Christianity big time here. Gain refers to benefits, and benefits above all are spiritual. We're talking about what lasts again and again and again. So you may find yourself emotionally benefiting when someone listens to you with care and compassion. That is gain. That is a benefit. And in marriage, we want people to be wise and mature rather than infantile and impulsive. That is riches. Coming back to the article, we move on here. It says, they will ask, how should one think about the celibate life that may lead in that many people lead in our time? So we must, the article advises us by saying, brothers and sisters, distinguish between a pure virgin life and a celibate, impure, lawless life. In the first is the ornament of Christianity and is commanded by the word of God. It's commanded, as in applauded. The second one is condemned both by evangelical teachings and natural law, as it dishonors the name of the Christian person. Against such a disorderly life, it is sufficient to adduce the following warning words of the apostle, that marriage is an honorable thing in all, and the marriage bed clean, but fornicators and adulterers God will judge. This comes from Hebrews 13, line 4 in the Bible. So let's do side notes here. What does that mean? Again, I personally will advise you guys to all set aside your preconditioned minds. If you come from a Western understanding, if you come from a modern or a Protestant background knowledge, I want to advise you to please set this aside. Clean that as much as possible and proceed with caution and with a very open mind. Virginity in the old times, especially in the Orthodox Church, does not necessarily relate to hymen or sexual activity, but it extends to an essential purity of the heart soul, which in Christian terms, Orthodox terms, is also referred to as the nous, N-O-U-S, and it comes from the ancient practice of Noetic tradition, the prayer of the heart. There are beautiful books about this, and I believe I may be able to offer you one at some point so that you may delve in that realm. There it is, a short, brief little book, Noetic Prayer as the Basis of Mission and Struggle Against Heresy by Archimandrite Ephraim Triandaphillopoulos. Right there. So I will put this in the comments section as we're speaking about this. But coming back to our info, what we're talking about here, basically, yes, a Christian must strive for purity, of course, on all levels though. Not just physical, not just mental, not just emotional, spiritual, all of it together. Because basically, just because you may be physically a virgin, but you lie and deceive your beloved, does not at all make you a Christian, doesn't make you chaste. Or just because many Christians call themselves Christians by, doing certain acts of piety, doesn't make them Christians. It really has to go with a clean heart and following Christianity with a pure heart. So let's come back to center here. This is pretty much the article that I translated and wanted to share with you all. Thank you for your patience. I hope that this has brought some enrichment to you all. I hope that it has brought some expansion of your hearts. I have mentioned in the past, and I will mention here again, if you are pursuing the Orthodox tradition and you want to delve deeper, please don't look to my videos as the sole, the only resource. You will need to have a spiritual father who understands properly. My videos are to give some guidance again, enough so that those of you who are interested may have the right discernment to choose the right spiritual father. Of course, I am not a spiritual father. I'm not a priest. I'm just a Bulgarian lady who happens to speak Bulgarian and English languages, and I can translate those resources. And yeah, I have a little, diverse knowledge, and I think that that can help bridge. But ultimately, if you guys are wanting to devote yourselves to Orthodoxy, you will need to have a spiritual father and confessor. And my hope is that my videos can give you clues, enough information so as to how to discern. Definitely, don't run from manipulators, don't run for ecumenical heresies. Feel free and open to ask spiritual fathers, priests, questions about difficult topics, because their job is to be a healing presence, to hear you and to give you instructions. Yes, we have to obey. Yes, obedience is very important. However, whom we obey matters crucially. We don't want to obey liars. We don't want to obey, in Christian terms, the Antichrist. We want to obey where the truth is, those who are vessels, carriers of the truth. And my hope is that these videos can give you again and again a better clue as to how not to follow blindly and out of the fear that's the terror, but have the fear that is the empowering fear in terms of the vulnerability that I was describing in this video. There's so much to say about this, but I will wrap up here for today. I'll say enough is enough. I will follow up again. So this, like I said earlier, is episode 16. This was part 1. So look forward for episode 16 part 2 and the follow-up parts. I will continue to bring up translated articles from the Bulgarian patriarchy on in terms of Orthodox Christian marriage and morale within that type of marriage, as some of you guys had requested. So with this, I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I look forward to our next times together. Thank you. Bye bye.